Stop hitting snooze on new tech. Upgrade the whole team at Lenovo.com. Unlock AI experiences with the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Powered by Intel Core Ultra processors. So you can work, create, and boost productivity all on one device. Win the tech search for business PCs at Lenovo.com.
Lenovo.
When the energy is high and the music is right, pushing past your limits becomes that much easier. Take a reggaeton run or strength class on the Peloton tread, and you'll quickly see why these are the workouts you've been searching for. Every day brings new challenges from expert coaches who train and speak the same language as you do. Level up your workouts with Peloton Tread. Find your push, find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
Welcome to mini episode number 408 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have two spooky stories for you today. And the last story comes from the 23rd of October 2024. And story number 1 comes from Becky. From a very early age, my mum introduced me to all things spooky. As a side note, and connected to the witch farm, due to my mum's connections as a writer, we became friends with the wonderful Eddie Burks and did a spirit clearing with him. I then picked him up a few times as I lived in the same city, and we went for several lunches at a nearby hotel. He was such a lovely gentleman and extremely genuine. We always did something special for Halloween. Even as I got much older and moved away from her for my job, she would always read a ghost story to me over the phone on or around October the 31st. Real Life Ghost Stories has provided me with such comfort, and it has been a wonderful substitute for the spooky tales of my mum. I have had many strange experiences which I believe are paranormal, but they have, for the most part, been very positive. My mother's experiences were far more dramatic and often darker, and I hope to be able to share some of those with you in the future. For now, though, here is my earliest experience. As my mum had me at such a young age, my maternal grandparents were always a huge part of my life. And my mum and I spent a lot of my childhood living with them in the family home, with my aunt, my mum's youngest sister, who was still at home. Until I was about 4 or 5, we lived in a large and beautiful house with several acres of land in a picturesque riverside village. I have very vivid memories of living there. My earliest memory being confirmed by the family as being from when I was 18 months old. I can even remember 3 dreams I had whilst we lived there. Speaking of dreams, even as a small child, I knew the difference between dreaming and waking, and often had and still have lucid dreams. Although I loved the house, there was a lot of sadness and trauma associated with it. My mum and grandparents had somewhat of a torrid time with my father, who had given my family the impression that he was fully prepared to support my mum and me, and then vanished shortly after I was born. He lived in a village only a few miles away, but went completely radio silent. My mum was deeply distressed, as he had led her to believe that her future was with him, and my grandparents were very upset about the situation. To cut a long story short, my father had no interest in me, but for reasons known only to himself, having initiated contact with him as an adult, I strongly suspect he has narcissistic personality disorder. He began a harassment campaign towards the family. This involved frequent late-night silent phone calls, sending taxis and takeaway food, and then, most sickeningly, sending a hearse to the house. My very young and very idealistic mum then got into new relationships and was encouraged by my grandparents to go to college. The result was that she seemed to flit in and out of my life, and on one occasion went AWOL for 2 weeks. When I was older, I found out that this was because she was trying to help a young man battle a drug addiction. Whilst this was going on, my mum's brother, my uncle, developed Hodgkin's disease, as it was known then, and died aged 27 when I was 4 years old, after a prolonged illness of about a year to 18 months. My grandparents did their absolute best to protect me from all of this and make me feel secure. But little ones do pick up on things, and I think I must have been aware of something as I developed some anxious behaviours. One of these was rocking back and forth in bed, sometimes quite violently. I was gently discouraged from doing this, but it was a way for me to self-soothe, and I think they realised it helped me to get to sleep. This brings us to Christmas Eve when I was 3 or 4 years old. I vividly remember being so excited about Christmas Day. There was no way I could sleep, and so I was rocking in bed. Although I didn't have a nightlight in my bedroom, the landing light was always kept on at night, and my door was slightly open. I don't know what time it was, but I heard everyone else in the household go to bed, and had been checked on by my mum and grandparents before they settled down for the night. I can vividly remember being wide awake and feeling frustrated that I just could not go to sleep. To little me, the morning felt like an eternity away. As I continued to rock, my bedroom door began to slowly and silently open wider. I remember my first thought was that it was one of my grandparents coming in because they had heard me rocking and I had woken them up. So I stopped rocking and held my breath, awaiting a mild telling off. Instead of either of my grandparents, who were both quite small people, a very tall and very large man came into my room. He was dressed in a full-length hooded red robe with white fur trim, a wide black belt and black boots. Most notable was his beard. Now, I had experienced quite a few pretend Santas and their cotton wool beards in my young life so far, but this man's beard looked very real. It was long and lush and curly and, of course, white. So white, it almost glimmered. I was in no doubt whatsoever that this was, in fact, the Father Christmas, and I remember a feeling of very real awe. I felt no fear whatsoever. The strange thing was, he did not smile and he looked very stern, although his eyes were kind. He looked at me and put a finger to his lips in a shushing gesture, and as he did this, I was overcome with the most wonderful and warm, calm feeling. All my excitement and anxiousness fell away. As I saw him leave the room, I lay down and fell instantly asleep. The next morning, I can remember thinking, why on earth hadn't I gotten up and followed him or spoken to him? But even now, I can remember that wonderful sense of deep peace and calm, and know that I wouldn't have been able to do anything except go to sleep. My family said that I had come down on Christmas morning and said that I had seen Father Christmas, and they just thought I was being a typical kid. But as the years went on, and I insisted, they wondered. Even though this was 46 or so years ago, I can remember it just as vividly as that Christmas Eve. I do remember my dreams and have experienced sleep paralysis, but this experience was very different. For one thing, I was definitely rocking before he came into the room. Even as a child, I tried to debunk this myself by pondering if it was somehow my grandfather who had dressed up. This idea was ridiculous, however. My grandpa was about 5'7" and about 10 stone. And the man I saw must have been well over 6 feet tall. I didn't have any male relatives that were that tall and that large. Also, my grandpa was lovely, and he was just not the type of person who would dress up. Ever. Then I wondered if someone had broken into the house, but this is also ridiculous. What burglar would dress up as Father Christmas, miraculously get into a locked house, leaving no trace of a break-in, and take nothing? And I never forgot the sense of awe and wonder, and the beautiful feeling he instilled in me. I often have nightmares, and occasionally I can wake up, become aware of my surroundings, and then experience a strong and horrible, inexorable pull back into sleep, and the same nightmare continues. It wasn't like that at all. I was 100% fully awake and hadn't been to sleep because I was so excited and wired. It is an experience I treasure to this day. My explanation? I believe in angels, and I think that Christmas Eve some angel or benevolent spirit paid a visit to a little girl who was very excited, but who also was struggling with anxiousness. I've never seen any spirit or being before or since then, and I believe that I never will. I firmly believe some people have this ability and can see spirits, but not all of us can. I do believe I may be clairaudient, however, but that is for another time. So that is my story. And I hope it serves as an example that the invisible world can be equally as loving, peaceful and reassuring as it can be scary. So full disclosure here, kids, I done messed up. Okay. Very annoyingly, Becky sent me this story. Not annoyingly that she sent me this story. That's not what I mean, right? Please allow me to continue. Don't interrupt. Becky sent me this story and she sent it at the exact right time for it to be read out over the 12 days of Christmas, or how many days of Christmas we did festive fear days, and I mislabeled it. I got it and I opened it and I put it as the wrong label, so it wasn't in my listener stories label, and I bloody missed it, and I'm really sorry, because this would have been the perfect Christmas story for the 12 days of Christmas, and I did not label it correctly. And then Becky sent me a lovely message and was like, oh, I sent you a story and I thought it was like kind of good for Christmas, and yeah, I missed it, but it still deserved to be read, right? Obviously. So I'm reading it now. It's a bit late. It's a bit late for Santa Claus, but the story is beautiful. It brought me great joy, and I thought, no, it has to be read. So Becky, even though we've spoken about this already, I apologise publicly for not reading this story, and especially when you sent it in at the perfect time for it to be read at Christmas. And this story did get me thinking about Christmas time and Santa Claus and all that, obviously like a month too late, but still. When I was at home for Christmas, one of my nieces was very upset Christmas Eve night because she was terrified of Santa. And you know what? I don't blame her. Santa is pretty scary. He is a big man that comes into your house in the middle of the night and gives you toys, and he watches you to see if you're naughty or nice. Like, I understand that, you know, he's not meant to be scary, but he's still pretty scary. You know, she was like, what if I wake up and Santa Claus is in my room? I was like, oh, I don't know. God, yeah, that is something to be worried about. I'd be worried too if I were you, kid. And then she was like, what if I have to get up in the night and I run into Santa Claus? Yeah, God, I don't know what you're going to do about that. Probably don't get up in the night, maybe. So Santa Claus, if you're listening, I understand that your image is very positive, but maybe, you know, have a think about your potential parallels to the Hat Man. Just saying. One man's Santa Claus is another man's Hat Man, as the saying famously goes.
Stop hitting snooze on new tech. Upgrade the whole team at Lenovo.com. Unlock AI experiences with the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. Powered by Intel Core Ultra processors. So you can work, create, and boost productivity all on one device. Win the tech search for business PCs at Lenovo.com.
Lenovo.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge. From worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This cold and flu season, Instacart is here to help deliver all of your sick day essentials. Whether you're in prevention mode and need vitamins, hand sanitizer, and that lemon tea your Nana swears by, or you're in healing mode and need medicine, soup, and a lot more tissues. Simply download the Instacart app and get sick day supplies that reinvigorate or relieve, delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Excludes restaurant orders, service fees, and terms apply.
Jewelry isn't a gift you give just once. It's a way to remind your loved one of a beautiful moment every time they see it. Blue Nile can help you find the gift that says how you feel and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com to find the perfect jewelry gift for any occasion. BlueNile.com.
And story number 2 today comes from Annie. I live in quite a remote area in northern Sweden. It's typical countryside for this part of the world, with lots of woodland, mountains and neighbours whose houses are barely visible from mine. I like to go for walks in my neighbourhood, for want of a better word, on the gravel car road. It's extremely rare that I meet anyone, and considering how few people live out here, I often recognise them when I do. On one of my walks a couple of months ago, I saw a man coming towards me. I reacted a little since I seldom meet people, and everyone knows that us Swedes hate meeting other people. I'm just kidding, obviously. It's just that as he approaches me, I realise I don't recognise him. He's around my age, mid-30s, dark hair, but I react to his clothing the most. It was March here, which means around 2 to 5 degrees Celsius, still snow, and the surrounding area is still grey. Because of that, most people here wear signal vests and outdoor gear when outside to be visible and comfortable. But as he comes closer, I saw him wearing an old-fashioned looking shirt. You know, the kind without buttons, with a bit of a puffy sleeve. He also wore these old-looking thick gingham patterned pants that looked too short for him, and a pair of heavy shoes. He was carrying a jacket of some sort, dark blue, with something that looked like an emblem on it. All of his gear looked quite home-sewn and old-fashioned. Adding to this, he carried no bag and no headphones or anything like you might expect a dude of my age to do. He passed me, and courtesy calls for me to make some type of greeting, so I lift my hand in a wave. It takes a little while for him to react, and I'm honestly not sure how he responded because I only saw it from the corner of my eye by that point. But he did somehow acknowledge me. I got the weirdest vibe. I thought perhaps he was going to town to some event, but the way he was heading had nothing of interest. It headed towards my house, up a mountain, and a couple of neighbours of mine. It struck me that there is actually a bus stop where he was going, but when I checked, there wouldn't be a bus coming for 2 hours. If he was coming from a bus stop, say to go to a friend's house, that bus stop is another 30 minutes walk from where he was coming from. So the travel thing made no sense. It was way too early to go into town, and very weird for him to get off at the bus stop before mine. Another theory was that he had come from some type of event close by. It's fairly common for our Neighbours Association to have events including folk music, etc., but never at lunchtime on a Friday. And the area that they always use is far away from me. So I felt kind of left with the theory that he was either a dude I've never seen who simply liked to dress like that, disliked technology at a young age, and was on his way from one of the nearby houses to another one of the nearby houses, which mostly host old people. And like I said, I've never seen him before. Or he was a ghost, or we shared a time dimension for a while or something. He was as solid as you and I even saw him when I turned around to look. But he was so out of place, and his journey made no sense. I had a weird feeling behind my back as I kept walking, like something was following me. But I don't know if that just might have been me being nervous. And I didn't see him again. I love stories like this. I really do, because it's just like, it's not like a haunted house story. It's not protracted. It's not drawn out. You know what I mean? It is a story. It is simply a really weird moment in time, and I absolutely love that. And of course, when you live in an area like that, you do know everybody. You know all your neighbours, you know people who are coming and going, and you also know how people are going to be dressed at a certain time of year. And when you see somebody who is not wearing their like reflectors, who is not wearing like weatherproof clothes, you're like, sorry, are you new here? Like, what the heck? Who are you and why are you dressed like that? Say for a minute, right, this man is, you know, it's a glitch in the matrix, it's a time slip. You're both seeing each other from different dimensions. Is he looking at you going, what the fuck is she wearing? Who is this person? What is she wearing? She's like covered in layers, and she's wearing this reflecting gear. Like, what the heck is going on? And I always wonder with stories like this, did that man then go home, you know, to his family and go, the weirdest thing happened to me today, right? When I was walking home, I saw this girl And it just gave me a really weird feeling. She seemed really out of place. She was wearing all this really odd clothes. But of course, in those days, there weren't podcasts to write into. So these stories don't get immortalised. There were no Reddit threads about weird experiences with time travellers. But it did also cross my mind, right, that, you know, when you see people who make like TikTok videos and stuff, where they dress in like period clothes and do like, I suppose you'd call them like thirst trap TikTok videos and Instagram reels. There's one guy in particular that I'm thinking of that I have a particular, he's my worst enemy. He doesn't know he's my enemy, but he's my worst enemy. Like, what if it was somebody like that? What if it was somebody who was like, you know, making TikToks in the snow in Sweden, wearing one of those old fashioned shirts unbuttoned? You know what I mean? If I'm alone in that thought, then that's just me. But I can see somebody seeing a content creator in the wild being like, what the heck? This is a time traveler. I had that experience recently. I was out for a walk down by the river with my mum, and these two people walked by who were dressed in, I don't think it was purposefully Victorian clothes, but they looked Victorian. And I honestly was like, did I just see those people? Were they real? They were real, by the way, just to clarify. Were they real? Is this a time slip? What is happening? They were definitely real people. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Real Life Ghost Stories. Thank you to Becky and Annie for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 23rd of October, 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some more content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
Some things you wouldn't mind being stuck with, like a huge inheritance. But a phone that has to be plugged in just right so it charges is not one of those things. Switch to Verizon and we'll pay off your old phone up to $800 via prepaid MasterCard for a new one on us. Just trade in any phone from our top brands with select unlimited plans. $829.99 purchase with new smartphone line on select unlimited plans. Minimum $90 per month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months required. Plus $830 trade-in/promo credit applied over 36 months. Trade-in terms apply. Payoff phone requires smartphone purchase and port in with new smartphone line on select plan. Must provide most recent bill showing payoff amount of eligible phone. Additional terms apply.